Welcome to Never Mind the Ballots election countdown with me, Ryan Saby. Just 13 days to go till Britain heads to the polls, and it's not looking so great for Rishi Sunak, as the gambling scandal is the latest controversy to rock his campaign. Meanwhile, Labour Sir Keir Starmer was back on a sticky wicket, as he suggested Jeremy Corbyn would have been a better Prime Minister than Boris Johnson. And I'll be joined by Shadow Science Secretary Peter Kyle. Subscribe at youtube.com/@sunelection and never miss a thing. This is Never Mind the Ballots, election countdown. I'm joined down the line by Sun News reporter Thomas Godfrey. But before I come back to you, Thomas, I'll be speaking to Shadow Science Secretary Peter Kyle. Thank you so much for joining us today, Peter. I just want to start first of all with that debate last night in York, the BBC leaders debate. Was Sir Keir Starmer seeming to warm to the idea of having Jeremy Corbyn as Prime Minister?
No. I think what you saw was Keir recognise the terrible defeat we had in 2019 and the need to listen and learn from what the public say. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks about Jeremy Corbyn back then as individuals. It's what the public told us about Jeremy Corbyn and the perspectives he stood on. So Keir stood up as leader and said he would listen, he would learn, and he would change the party on the back of it. And look what he's done. We are now a party which is fit for service. We are facing the future. We are offering the public a decade of national renewal to fix the fundamental problems left after 14 years of chaos and instability with the Tories, but also crucially to seize the huge opportunities that are out there if only we have a government with stability, the ideas and policies to capture them.
So you don't think that Sir Keir will be regretting any of those comments this morning? This was, of course, the Jeremy Corbyn who seemed to fail to condemn the Kremlin over the Salisbury attacks.
The great thing about politics is at the end of the day, you're judged on what you do. And look at what Keir has done. I mean, after that Hartlepool defeat, and let's just be honest about it, this was a low moment for our party. 3 years ago, we were hammered in Hartlepool, and we had a real profound lesson to learn. Keir has led our party through absolute root and branch, profound change because of what he's done in practice. Because changing the party isn't something you talk about, it's only something you do. And we stand now less than 2 weeks before polling day as a party that has changed its people, its politics and its policies. That's why we're reconnecting with people up and down the country. They are turning to us for the solutions that we offer. And we take nothing for granted, but it's an opportunity we are seizing with both hands. And if we can do it, yes, we will start with those 6 steps forward, which is connecting with the public and then offer the decade of national renewal our country so desperately needs.
So it's not Sir Keir Starmer being sort of afraid to offend the left of the party. This was, of course, Jeremy Corbyn, who called Hamas friends. He was a bit reluctant to send arms to Ukraine as well, when Boris Johnson was at the forefront of helping Ukraine, sending billions of pounds there.
Well, look at Keir's deeds. Jeremy Corbyn is no longer a Labour MP. He's no longer a member of the Labour Party. He is standing against the Labour Party, and Keir Starmer's Labour Party is standing against him. There is no greater illustration of the profound change our party has gone through. It is not superficial. It goes right from the top to the bottom of our party. We are facing the electorate. We are fit for service. We have the solutions to the challenges left by 14 years of chaos and instability. But crucially, we're about the future. I'm sitting here in South Yorkshire in the industrial heartlands, talking about research grants that will stretch 10 years into the future so we can fully make the most of all the public money by crowding in and making sure we can incentivize loads of private sector investment to create the jobs of the future. That's what the Labour Party.
So you're talking about all this investment and the decade of renewal. What do you make of the taxtopia that Jeremy Hunt spoke about, and all these extra taxes on big business, the windfall taxes on oil and gas companies? Isn't that going to hinder growth?
Well, there is one person that is not suitable to be criticising anyone else or pointing at anyone else. It is the person who has led to the lowest growth in our economy and the highest taxation for several generations. The tax burden that Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak and all successive Tory prime ministers and chancellors have put, their legacy is the highest tax burden for 80 years. We want to lower taxes on working people, but we can only do it by getting the economy growing again. We can only do it by fixing the fundamentals in our NHS, public services. We can only do it by offering a decade of national renewal with those crucial six steps forward, so we can take those steps forward to healing the challenges our country faces, but to seize the opportunities that are out there. That's the only way we can tackle these fundamental challenges. But to do so, don't listen to the people who got us into this mess in the first place.
Isn't there a fear, though, Peter, that you're going to get in, if elected in a few weeks' time, you'll look at the books and you'll think there just isn't the money there. So come what, the first budget, maybe in September, or the second budget, you'll just say, no, we'll just have to raise a few taxes here or there. And that's probably how it's going to pan out.
That's the really interesting thing about me sitting where I am today in South Yorkshire in the industrial heartlands, because what I'm not talking about is new money. I'm talking about using existing money better, because there are some areas, for example, in the aerospace sector, where government money is used, public money is used to stretch into over a 10-year period. For every £1 of public money, £10 of private money is attached to it. So what we're doing is looking for areas where a similar approach to funding can attract and can ratchet up the kind of investment we see from the private sector, but crucially, by giving certainty, stability over a decade's period, it will attract the best talent, not just from here in Britain, but the best talent from around the world, so that we can be innovation leaders. And when Britain is leading in innovation and technology and the jobs of the future, that means we have export opportunities that will go
Peter,
around the world. Jack, that's not new money, that's using existing money better. And that is what you'll get a lot more of with the Labour Party.
But how are people going to feel that, the cash in their pocket at the end of every month, and there's lots of speculation about council tax re-evaluation? Is that on the cards for Labour? Is that you're going to get into power and then realise that this may be one way of raising a few extra pounds?
Well, Jack, that's not speculation. That is accusations from a governing party that has bust our economy with a Liz Truss mini budget, that has mismanaged our economy because they've put us in a low growth spiral, and is the highest taxing party that we have had for 80 years. Their accusations are worthless because we judge them by their deeds and not their words anymore. They are a party that is mired in scandal. Just 2 weeks before polling day, they are mired in a scandal, which has illustrated once again that for them it is party first, person first, self-enrichment first, ahead of the needs of our country. Keir Starmer stood out in front of the public yesterday and said that public service will come first. The country will come before party. That's what you'll get with Keir Starmer and his changed Labour Party.
Peter, I noticed this week that Thangam Debonair seemed to be slapped down very quickly when she spoke about Premier League and the transfer levies. Obviously, Keir Starmer's got the right to choose whoever he wants in his cabinet if elected on July the 4th. Is everyone safe?
Jack, I can't believe you're asking me this question. I have no idea at all. But what I do know with Keir is that he holds us to the highest standards. I love hard work. I love being rewarded for hard work, and that's what I found Keir to be as a leader. He has driven us so hard since he became leader. He set expectations incredibly high. I was appointed to this job back in September and had to get a programme of government up and running by early January. So you can imagine the work that's gone into it. And ever since then, every time you deliver something, he asks for more and a higher standard. And I find that exhilarating. I find that absolutely motivational. You are finding with Keir a team around him who are really putting in the hard graft. And I think that you can see that in the policies that we've done. Hard graft, using public money better, not just always trying to solve money problems with new money, because we recognise our country is in real difficult, dire straits at the moment. So being creative, great policies, but also facing the future, not just stuck in the past. That's what you get with Keir.
Peter, I just want to talk to you. It's Ryan Sabey here, by the way. Jack was last week, but I just want to talk to you about gambling and the controversy surrounding the Conservative Party. Do you think the Prime Minister's gone far enough? Do you think he really needs to step in and actually suspend those candidates? Do you think he's just been a little bit slow waiting for these investigations, but he actually needs to step in quicker?
Ryan, sorry, I'm staring into a camera and don't see who's sitting there. But yes, of course he does. It's extraordinary to me that when you compare how Rishi Sunak as a leader has treated his own staff compared to how the police have treated their staff in a leadership position. The police have suspended instantly, pending an investigation, the police officer that perhaps has had allegations made against him. But Rishi Sunak just can't take a stand against his own people. Why is he not able to, why is he too weak to actually remove these people? 2 weeks before polling day, less than 2 weeks. And Rishi Sunak is saying that he is comfortable standing alongside candidates who are mired in scandal, who are using, perhaps, we don't know yet, that's the nature of the investigation, but alleged insider information for self-enrichment. But this should be about public service. This should be about country first, which is what Keir Starmer has said since the beginning of his leadership. That's what we offer as a Labour Party, country first, party second. I cannot understand why Rishi Sunak is too weak to offer the same.
And Peter, I just want to talk to you about the real opposition. You know, if you do get in, if the polls are right, you must be delighted with how the polls are going. Who's going to provide the real opposition? Because you may have just a few Tory MPs, a smattering of Lib Dem MPs. Is Keir Starmer going to be looking around, behind him, and it's going to be the MPs behind him who don't have government jobs who are actually going to be prove the real opposition in government?
Well, let me just say that there are millions of voters out there who have not yet made up their mind. You know, when I'm out there meeting residents, and I've been up right around the country meeting residents, there are a lot of people who are still thinking very hard about this election. That's why we're working so hard for every single vote. We take nothing for granted. But we are fighting for a solid mandate to change Britain. This is a change election, and the choice is very clear. 14 years of chaos and instability. Do you want more of that? Because that is what you will get if you elect the Tories, or change based on the missions to heal the challenges of our country. 6 steps forward, a decade of national renewal in which we'll seize the opportunity that Britain has with all the potential we have.
And just very
we are fighting every single vote and take nothing for granted.
Just very finally, Peter, do you think there might be sort of legitimacy problems with your win? Only in terms of you may end up with a percent or two more, or the same percent as Jeremy Corbyn got in 2017, that 40% mark, but you might end up with 200 seats more. Does that raise sort of legitimacy problems?
Ryan, you're talking about a win almost in the past tense. This has not happened. There is nothing inevitable about winning or losing an election. That's why we are fighting so hard for every single vote in this election. And let me tell you that this cannot become a referendum on the Labour Party. This is a general election, a choice of 2 central propositions: 14 years of chaos and instability with the Tories, a changed Labour Party offering a prospectus of change to the country. So don't make this just a referendum on the Labour. There is nothing inevitable about this. We are fighting for every vote. And if people want change, there is only one way to get it, and that is voting for Labour a week on Thursday.
Peter, Labour Shadow Cabinet Minister there, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And now, Thomas, what did you make of that interview? Peter Carl there was very pushed quite hard on that gambling line, saying that Rishi Sunak needs to act a bit quicker and a bit firmer. What did you make of that?
Well, first of all, Jack, I'd like to say you've got quite a bit taller and your voice is a bit deeper than I remember. I think, the difference between myself and Peter Carl this morning is one of us has read the running order quite clearly as to who's actually going to be hosting the show. I think on the gambling side, obviously it's something Rishi Sunak was pushed on quite heavily last night, and Peter Carl's made the comparison between the Conservative Party and the police. Obviously, the difference there is that the police, obviously a publicly funded body, something that police officers actually have an offence called misconduct in public office, which is what this police officer, the close protection officer in question, has been arrested on suspicion of violating. So there are legal differences, and it's important to point that out. But elsewhere in that interview, I thought one of the questions he swatted away rather quite viciously when you suggested that Thangam Debonair, having been slapped down by Keir Starmer in the week, that actually some members of that shadow cabinet might not have Whitehall buildings to walk into on July 5th because they could be changed, their slots, their roles could be altered. And the way he shut that down, I thought it's fairly precedented. It has happened before. You look at the coalition where suddenly there were loads of Lib Dems coming into the cabinet. And there has been talk in the last month or so that Douglas Alexander, the former Gordon Brown cabinet minister, could be brought back straight into the cabinet if he wins his seat in Edinburgh. So I think that question was swatted away quite viciously, but actually there's a lot to talk about there, and there is some substance that Keir Starmer, I think, if he wins, will have to immediately address.
And Thomas, you were up there in York at the University of York in that spin room, mixing with Labour's shadow cabinet members and ministers. Rishi Sunak seemed quite tetchy last night. He was very, very angry about the gambling row. What was his mood in general? How do you feel like he did? Did he do enough to claw any sort of support back? He's on this damage limitation exercise, but how did he do?
Well, I think if anyone in his position, it's going to be a struggle. And also, he was going on last. There'd been an hour and a half. The crowd were getting quite riled up. By the end, you had people pointing at him and making such claims that Russia and Belarus are the only two countries, quote, in the world that aren't in the ECHR, which is obviously false. So sort of under the lights, under the pressure, in the situation he's in, you can understand why maybe he tried to take a few swings back at the crowd. And Keir Starmer also, I think, got fairly tetchy at some points as well, especially when he was sort of pushed up into a corner for the first time, literally surrounded by Fiona Bruce and hundreds of people in the Question Time crowd about things like immigration, and also about the line where he slightly stuttered, where he was potentially going to say that Jeremy Corbyn would have been a better Prime Minister than Boris Johnson.
That was interesting. We've seen lots of polls. We've had 3 big polls out this week showing it's going to be a potential electoral wipeout for the Conservatives. How do you think Rishi Sunak would have done with the undecideds?
Well, I think, a lot of Sun readers are undecided voters, and they'll get their chance on Monday, obviously, to hear from both Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak in our Never Mind the Ballots election showdown. But I think with the undecided voters, one of the key issues that has been sort of ever present throughout this campaign is that issue of tax rises. And Rishi Sunak last night was reverting back to some of the attack lines we've heard right throughout this campaign, the £38.5 billion black hole, the tax rises by £2,000. And I think it was really telling that in the final question was a 19-year-old university student at the University of York asked Rishi Sunak for one policy that he would implement that would make his life better. And the first thing that sprang into the Prime Minister's mind was that at every stage of this student's life, when he gets his first job, Rishi Sunak said he would cut his taxes. Right. And so that is clearly the one issue that the Conservative Party are praying, frankly, will land with undecided voters in the next 13 days.
Right. Stay with me, Thomas. We'll be checking in with Ed Davey after this. It's time for our moments of the day, and it wouldn't be Never Mind the Ballots without checking in on the latest from Ed Davey. Here he is with his sleeves rolled up, building hotels for insects. Thomas, what are you making of Ed Davey? You were with him last night up in York. He seemed to have a pretty good answer for why he's doing all these stunts up and down the country during this election campaign.
He did, and I think it's something that, as he alluded to, a lot of it's his backroom, a lot of it's his spinners who are putting him up to do things, and he's happy to oblige because it is getting a fair bit of coverage. And actually, the Lib Dem camp last night, we were sat actually in the spin room very close to some of the Lib Dem spinners who were very impressed with his performance. And other than the sort of omni-burn of tuition fees that's come up at every turn of this campaign, although it was some 12 years ago now, other than that, actually, a lot of the Lib Dems think that last night went very well for him, and that answer on why he's doing these stunts was very explanatory. And I'll let you into a secret, Ryan. I ended up back at the hotel last night with Ed Davey and his team, Ed Davey enjoying a pint, and it got to about 11:15 and he was told that you've got an early morning today, and was sent packing up to bed.
So just one quick question, Thomas, on Sir Ed Davey. As much as he was talking to the whole country, he was also focused on a lot of those key seats that they're targeting, 40 or 50 seats around the country. Would they have been impressed by him?
I think they would. And you look at the places he's targeting today, he's staying in the Yorkshire area to go and target one of the seats. And then he's going off to Norfolk, where the Lib Dems are targeting a number of seats as well. And I think that they've worked out here that the sort of 2019 coalition of Tory voters, you look at the blue wall, which I think the Tories almost sort of took for granted in 2019 to focus on smashing the red wall, that actually in those sort of southern seats, that sort of corridor down from obviously Kingston area in West London down towards Cornwall, where the Lib Dems have a few seats as well, they're looking at those voters who may look at the Conservative Party now and not feel confident enough in them, but also don't want to pivot so radically to voting for Labour. And for them, Lib Dem is potentially the best option. And that's why some of the polls have put the Lib Dems as high as 67 seats, which would be their best election result in about 20 years.
And one thing I was interested in last night, Thomas, was the actual spin room itself. A lot of the times we have big hitters. I was up in Manchester for the first debate, the ITV debate, Sunak versus Starmer. We had Michael Gove up there. I think Laura Trott was up there as well. This time you had Bim Afalami and Kevin Hollinrake, and they're relatively both junior ministers. Does that say that a lot of senior people, senior Tories, just don't want to go out and bat for the Prime Minister anymore because they can see the writing on the wall?
Well, I think it's not only that, Ryan. I think that's right, but also the actual amount of time that journalists were given to speak to Kevin Hollinrake. He only answered questions for around 2 minutes, and Bim Afalami gave a few one-on-ones to broadcasters, and then he was out of there as well. I only got one line out of him, actually. He said he'd give Rishi Sunak's performance an 8 or 9 out of 10. And you compare that to Labour and how they were managing their strategy last night. You had Jonathan Ashworth, the Shadow Paymaster General, who spoke at great length and was pretty much happy to answer questions from anyone, as was his confidence in Sir Keir Starmer's performance.
Just quickly, Thomas, how did the Labour spinners, I think Jonathan Ashworth was up there, how did they feel like he did, particularly with that Jeremy Corbyn question? Were they trying to bat that off quite a bit?
They were, and what we were told is that it was very much a case that he answered it, in their words, very clearly. Whether the transcript says that or not, that's something for viewers at home to decide.
Thank you, Thomas, for all your endeavours up there in York today. And thank you to all my guests for joining me on today's show. This was Never Mind the Ballots Election Countdown. Remember, you can subscribe to us on youtube.com/@SunElection. And don't forget to join us on Monday, June the 24th, live at 5:30 p.m. as we have Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer for a live showdown from the Sun HQ on sun.co.uk and the Sun's YouTube.